we went through a lot of concepts and theory. It is time now to bring on the knowledge together in a practical exercise covering the main principles we learned during the course. First, we need to know what to analyze. What is the purpose of our analytical exercise? So basically, what is the question at hand? We'll assume that the question for this exercise is raised by the supply chain leadership team and is the following. How is our supply chain organization performing compared to peers? In this situation, the leadership team of a company called 123 is interested in the performance of their supply chain department. They want to understand how the company is doing with respect to budget, but are also interested in uncovering some improvement opportunities through a peer analysis. To come up with meaningful answers about how supply chain is performing and how they are doing versus peer organization, we need to understand which are the key drivers of a supply chain organization, right? So for our analytical exercise, we need to interview the supply chain team and uncover the true value and cost drivers related to their work. Now, I'm sure you remember the questions who, what, when, where, why, and how from earlier in the course. Asking these questions to the relevant people from the supply chain team and some stakeholders would allow you to get a better understanding about the different supply chain processes carried out in the division. You will quickly learn which are the specific key drivers of performance and how the team currently monitors these figures. These metrics are necessary to understand the performance of the department and will be used to compare the organization's performance with other peer companies. All right, let's consider some of supply chain metrics in 123's case. Now, typically, the cost of a supply chain organization is influenced by the volume of production. So, please bear in mind that we are referring to production volume here, not sales volume. Obviously, there is a strong relation between sales and production volume, but that does not mean that it is the same, because we need to manage inventory levels. A firm's supply chain division deals with production, whereas the sales department is the one responsible for sales. If we have sufficient inventory of a product, we do not have to produce this product until we are below the desired level of inventory. Such level is called the reorder level. Every time a firm's inventory goes under the reorder level, supply chain receives a so to say order to produce additional units of the product sold to customers. Now, I believe this emphasizes greatly the importance of an accurate sales forecast. The organization needs to be able to predict the demand for different products throughout the year. This is necessary because the supply chain aims to produce the right quantity of product at the right time. Producing more than what is needed creates overstock and has a negative impact on the firm's cash flow, while having insufficient inventory levels might result in missed sales and unhappy customers, as they'll have to wait more time to receive products. For a large-scale manufacturing operation, a company needs buildings, machines, production and office personnel, raw materials, utilities, and many other resources. In addition, the company will have to sustain warehouse and delivery costs. In our example, we will consider the following types of cost. Labor cost, given by the number of people working in production, multiplied by the cost sustained per each person. In addition, we will consider some fixed costs that need to be sustained. Such costs are depreciation of buildings and machinery, and we will also take into account the costs for our supporting functions. For example, these are departments like HR and accounting. This is personnel that is not directly involved in production, but is necessary to support the production process. Examples are finance, HR, the management team, engineers, and so on. Now, we shouldn't forget expenses for items like utilities, water, and energy. And also, we need to take into account the ingredient costs, an important cost factor to track. On your screen, you can see a simplified profit and loss statement of a supply chain department. We have shown you the evolution of the production volume starting in 2016 through 2020, which is a forecast for the remainder of the year. Further, you see the budget and the variance of 2020 versus the budget and the variance of 2020 versus last year, 2019. Although very simplified, we now have a better understanding of how a supply chain organization operates. Let's revert back to the original question posed by management. How is our supply chain organization doing compared to peers? First, the leadership team wants to understand how we are doing versus the budget. For this type of analysis, we can use the tools examined in the descriptive analytics phase, such as historical analysis, variance analysis, and trend analysis. Also, a comparative analysis can work well. Typically, the four tools are used in parallel. Now, we can see on the graph that our labor cost fluctuated between 53 and 56% of the total cost. The 56% observed in 2020 is the highest since 2016, but is well below the budget of 57%. Our fixed costs are between 8 and 10%, but in 2020 we have 9%, which is worse versus the budget. The utility cost is trending between 6 and 8%, with 8% in 2020 the highest cost since 2016 and worse than budget. In contrary, the commodity cost is trending down, starting from 31% in 2016 towards 27% in 2020, which is also 1% lower compared to budget. Once we have seen these differences, we need to think about the factors that impacted our business and see if some of them are within our control. When we consider labor cost, for example, we can go ahead and make a first check verifying whether the firm's number of employees increased. A total cost figure is almost never sufficient to determine what happened. So we need to look at the number of employees needed per 1,000 production units. Also, we can look at the average salary per employee. This will give us the answer why our labor cost has increased over time. Another factor that deserves more attention are utility costs. Here we saw a 3% increase year on year. This is an instance when it will be beneficial to compare current and previous year's utility cost per 1,000 produced units. Do we see an increased consumption? Is it price driven? The fact that commodity costs are going up and down means that we should pay attention to this item too. Here, the market price will play an important role in the overall cost sustained, and it is highly possible that this is a cost item that is extremely driven. Now, if we think further about what can influence the cost of our supply chain department, we can think of inflation or the oil price that has an impact on energy costs. These are external factors that are not in our control. A company can seek protection from such risks by hedging through derivatives, but the process of how that's done is beyond the scope of the exercise.